Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers played a forgettable series in Chicago, losing the series to the Cubs. But don't look now. Shohei Ohtani is heating up. We're going to dig into that and a lot more. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. My name is Jeff Snyder. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio, although it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room over the last decade or so. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And with that said, let's jump right into our episode. The Dodgers played a lousy series in Chicago. It was lousy because of the results. It was lousy because of the weather. It was lousy, just a lousy series in general. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Cubs, and we'll dig into a few things about that. We'll talk in the second segment today, kind of about the series in general and moving past that. But I want to start on a positive note because yes, the Dodgers lost 2 out of 3. That means they're only on pace for 108 wins at this point. They're 8-4 now. I like to joke and say 158-4 is still on the table until they lose that 5th game. That's always an option. So I'm still rooting for 158-4. I'll take 150-12, but somewhere in that ballpark. But one of the things that's going to help the Dodgers over the course of the season, and it's kind of ironic that this happened here in a series that they lost 2 out of 3, but overall, I think it's going to be a good thing, is Shohei Ohtani is getting hot. He hit his first home run for the Dodgers in his last at bat at Dodger Stadium before they left on this road trip. Obviously, that was a big story. I had some thoughts on that. If you want to check out the postcast after Saturday's game, I did a postcast with Pete Fox, the host of the Locked On Dodgers postcast. I was on there and we talked a little bit about the Ohtani home run ball, gave some more thoughts on that. I'm not going to dig into that here on this episode. But Ohtani hit that homer, and then he homered in the first game in Chicago on Friday, a game that the Dodgers ultimately lost. And then overall, Ohtani then had multiple hits in all 3 games this weekend. And suddenly, when you look up, Ohtani is now batting .320 with a .364 on base percentage and a .580 slugging percentage. That's a .944 OPS. I mean, he's having a legitimately good offensive season. And that's part of one of my rules of thumb is if somebody's overall season performance can be drastically changed by a couple games, then it's too small of a sample size to get too high or low about. And so the fact is, Ohtani's overall, if Ohtani goes 0 for his next 12, his numbers are going to look pretty bad again. So I'm not going to get too excited about the .944 OPS right now, except for the fact that that's where we expect him to be. Last year, his OPS was .1066. In 2021, it was .964. This is in the realm of about where we expect Ohtani's offensive performance to be. And so while I'm not going to set it in stone that he's going to have a great offensive season, this is more what we expected, more the real Ohtani. And so, yeah, he's going to have slumps still, but I feel like that first home run, the last at bat in LA, clicked. Something clicked for him, something unlocked, and now he's he's a hard out. When you watch him at the plate, it's like he can hit the ball that the triple that he hit in this game on Sunday. It didn't look like he swung that hard. And it's he hit it 108 miles an hour. And the funny thing is he could have even had a better weekend because he hit one on Friday that exit velocity and launch angle should have been a home run, but he hit it to dead center into the wind. The wind on Friday was blowing in kind of left to right, but also in. And so it knocked it down. I looked up and I found several similar batted balls from Ohtani and other people. I tweeted out one example, and a lot of people misunderstood the tweet, which I'll talk about in a second. But Ohtani hit one with almost identical launch angle and exit velocity last year, and it went 418 feet and was a no doubt home run. This one went 352 feet and was a can of corn for Cody Bellinger in center field. I mean, that it was the wind factor. And yes, the wind is real. So I'm not saying, well, we can just add another home run to Ohtani's ledger. I'm saying quality of contact this weekend. Ohtani even had a slightly better weekend than we see from the results. And all of that is, that matters because going forward, quality of contact is most likely going to result in better results. And so I will take that quality of contact, even though that if it had been a home run, it would have tied the game. Later on in that game, James Outman, the last play of the game, hit what would have been a game-tying single, but instead Michael Busch made a diving play. Michael Busch decided to thank the Dodgers for trading him to a team that would put him in the starting lineup by kicking the Dodgers' butts this weekend. But back to that tweet, I just want to touch on that. I tweeted out a video of Ohtani's home run from last year, mentioned it was roughly the same at launch angle and exit velocity, but went 66 feet less far. And I think most people got what I was saying because most people were watching the game with me. We just the wind was a huge story in that game. Everybody watched the wind knock this ball down. And so I tweeted out. I didn't mention the wind because in context, everybody knew it was the wind. And what I didn't anticipate was that I have 17,000-ish followers on Twitter. So I expected, maybe 10,000 people to see it. And I expected 9,000 of them to have been watching the game or at least familiar with the concept of wind at Wrigley Stadium. It never crossed my mind to mention the wind in the tweet because it was clear from the context. But a lot of people jumped on it saying that I was trying to create some juiced ball conspiracy. And I tried to be nice on Twitter. I really do try not to call people stupid. And for the most part, I was successful. But even at the height of all the juiced ball stuff the last few years, the biggest estimates have been that juicing or dejuicing a ball can affect up to 8.7 feet of distance on a fly ball. This was 66 feet of difference. No one has ever suggested in the history of the world that a juiced or deadened ball could affect a batted ball by 66 feet. I doubt that even in 1920, when they literally went from they changed baseballs, went from a dead ball to something resembling what we have now, a current baseball. I doubt even that was 66 feet. The only way you can jump to a juiced ball conspiracy when I'm talking about a difference of 66 feet is if you are just looking for a juiced ball conspiracy or don't have any idea what juiced ball means. And again, so I didn't call anybody stupid. I don't know if people are stupid. A lot of people said a lot of stupid things. That doesn't mean they are stupid people. They might have just been doing an impression of a stupid person on Twitter. But of course, I wasn't tweeting about juiced or dead balls. I was tweeting about the wind at Wrigley Stadium, Wrigley Field, Wrigley Stadium. Come on, Jeffrey. At Wrigley Field, which everybody knows. And even if you're not a baseball fan, you may have heard that the Windy City has wind. Anyway, but Ohtani hit the ball really well this weekend, and hopefully that's going to continue, and we'll start to see a lot of results from him. Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts both struggled this weekend. They, especially, the last two games, and yet the Dodgers won one of the three games, were close to winning another one. I mean, they were a couple great defensive plays. I'm going to talk about that in the next time, in the Cubs defense, but Dodgers were a couple great defensive plays away from winning this series. So I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to talk about the weather. I'm going to talk about Mookie and Freddie, a lot more that went on in this series. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please continue to keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first hitting runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 fantasy sports app. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, in the PrizePicks app for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Hey, I'm back. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially want to thank our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. You can make that easier by subscribing wherever you're watching and listening right now. It's a lot of fun talking Dodgers with you. So hope you'll become an everydayer if you're not, and thank you if you are. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's a text message-based service. We send you out text messages when there's news or rumors or whatever with our thoughts. There was a lot of transactions this weekend we're going to get into. We were texting about all those. You can reply, have one-on-one conversations with us. It's a lot of fun, so check it out. Join subtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's just a few bucks a month with a free 14-day trial. You can also check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network, covering the whole world of sports or the Los Angeles world of sports, whichever you prefer. And be sure to check, if you can't watch the games on TV, you can hear every pitch of the hometown broadcast for every Dodger game on SiriusXM and the SXM app. Just search for Dodgers. You can also listen to this podcast on the SXM app by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And with that said, let's jump back into this series. I'm going to talk in the last segment today. I'm going to jump out of Dodger specific stuff and talk about some pitching injuries and, if that's a problem for Major League Baseball, all that. But let's talk more about this series. I mentioned Friday, the wind was bad there. It didn't necessarily, hurt one team more than the other. The umpiring, on the other hand, definitely did. Laz Diaz has been a bad umpire longer than I've been married. And I have a daughter in college. I have gray hair. And Laz Diaz has been a bad umpire longer than that. And so, it is what it is. And I think that's 2 straight episodes I've said that phrase that I hate. I don't know what else to say about umpires, because at this point, they're not going anywhere yet. Eventually they will, and that'll be a glorious day. In a perfect, a lot of people say, I just want to be consistent, call it both ways. That's not good enough for me. I want umpires to be good or to not do the things they're bad at anymore, like call balls and strikes. But yeah, I would take an evenly called bad game. Like on Saturday, the umpire was bad for both sides, and it was almost exactly even. On Friday, it was not close to even. I'm not saying Laz Diaz was favoring the Cubs. I'm saying that his bad calls went more against the Dodgers. And when you lose a game by 2 runs in a game that 16 runs are scored, when you are within inches several times of winning the game, having an umpire cost you a run and a half, it's pretty frustrating as a fan. And then Sunday, umpire was bad again. Haven't seen the scorecard yet. He was bad both ways. I do think it went more against the Dodgers, but we'll have to see on Monday morning if that's accurate or if it's my biased perception. We'll see though. But Miguel Rojas wasn't happy about the umpiring for a few reasons. He was the victim of a couple bad calls by umpires on strike 3s. There was a strike 3 bad call. He also went at a point when the game already should have been delayed because of rain. Basically, the umpiring crew decided we're going to try to get through 5 innings so that we can just call this game and everybody get on the plane and go away. So they played 2 innings in terrible conditions. The field was too wet to be playing on. Rojas hit what would have been an infield single, except he slipped on home plate coming out of the batter's box. So he was already frustrated, and then playing third base, he gets a ground ball to him that rolls through the mud to get to him, and then he throws the ball away, the wet, muddy ball to Freddie Freeman, so he gets an error. Rojas takes a little bit of pride in his defense. I don't know if you've heard that. So he was pretty fed up. He said after the game that it was ridiculous. He was standing in a puddle out at third base. That he said, we're not trying to get through this game. We're trying to get through 162 games. And I absolutely agree with him. Like it's so short-sighted to play through terrible conditions, trying to get these 5 innings in, because guess what? One game isn't going to matter to the Dodgers. If they had called this game and said, you know what, I know the Dodgers don't come back to Chicago. Guess they're not going to be able to finish this game. Dodgers only get 161 games this season. Guess what? That means they win the division by 19 and a half games instead of 20 games. Who gives a crap? And the Cubs, it might matter to the Cubs. If so, then they can play it after, play it the day after the regular season ends. And that helps the Dodgers because that's one less day of rust before they go into NLDS. Whatever it is, like, it's so short-sighted to play through dangerous conditions. Rojas slipped. He very easily could have pulled something. Gavin Lux later in the game slipped coming out of the box, could have pulled something. Playing in the defense, running the bases like that. It was awful. And that's Laz Diaz again. He's the crew chief. It's up to him once the game started. And it was clear what he was trying to do. Ultimately, it was unsuccessful. They had to delay the game before it was official anyway, so they finished it later. They should have delayed it 2 innings earlier. And either just called it or done the same delay and finished it later. It was ridiculous. But, again, like Rojas said, and like I've said, the Dodgers lost this game, 8-1. It's not why the Dodgers lost. The game was lost when Gavin Stone couldn't put away Michael Busch in the first inning with bases loaded and 2 outs and 2 strikes. And Busch hit a 3-run double. And that was before the weather was, or before the field was terrible. It was, and that was, an error by Freddie Freeman, which also the one of the 3 errors that wasn't because of the field conditions. Like the Cubs legitimately won this game. I'm just glad that nobody on the Dodgers got seriously hurt. And I guess I'm glad nobody on the Cubs got hurt too. Doesn't matter to me as much because I don't do a Cubs podcast, but it was reckless of Laz Diaz to try to play through this. Like when you have the grounds crew out there spending 10 minutes trying to get the field dry enough, knowing you have 6 outs you still need to get before the game's official. Like it was crazy, and it was never going to work. And I do think the game would have been closer if they had stopped the game when they should have. But it's not why the Dodgers lost the game. I'm just glad nobody got hurt. Friday's game, I told you I'd talk about the Cubs defense. Like the Cubs defense was outstanding. Nick Madrigal made a couple of great plays at third base. The game ended, like I said, on the Michael Busch. Great play. There was, I think Dansby Swanson had a really good play that game. All the weekend, there was a lot of good defense by the Cubs all weekend long. And so it's kind of running together in my mind. Mike Tauchman made a nice play on Sunday, bringing back bad memories of 2021, when if Mike Tauchman doesn't rob Albert Pujols of a home run, the Dodgers win the division. Just bad memories. Like Mike Tauchman, come on, people. But yeah, the Cubs played great defense, and it did, between Michael Busch hitting really well and the Cubs playing great defense, I think it did bring up a lot of hard feelings for Dodger fans who, infield defense is a concern for the Dodgers this year. The fact is, like the Cubs had, Joe Davis mentioned, the Cubs had great defense last year and great offense, and they didn't make the playoffs. Like, I'm not saying defense isn't important. I'm a huge fan of great defense. I'm saying that you win games by scoring more runs than your opponents, and you can do that a lot of different ways. Preventing runs defensively is important, but not more important than scoring runs offensively. And but all in all, this weekend, yeah, the Cubs won on Friday because of their defense, because there were the Michael Busch play at the end of the game. That would have been a game-tying single if he doesn't make that play. And there were a couple others during the game by Madrigal and others that huge plays in huge situations that they made the plays, and it was a big deal to them. It saved the game for them. And so, yeah, you got to tip your hat to the Cubs. But because of that, like when you look at all together, I believe the Cubs are a very good defensive team. I don't know that they are as good as we saw this weekend. I think defense has some luck too. You dive for a ball, you're not going to get it 100% of the time. The Cubs basically did this weekend, especially in the infield. They made almost all the plays they tried to make. And that won't always happen that way. But even more importantly, the weather. Like April in Wrigley, you guys, if you're an everyday, you've heard me talk in the past about how when the Dodgers go to Coors Field, just throw out everything. Don't get too high or too low about anything that happens, because Coors Field is not a real stadium. It's not real baseball. It's a beautiful stadium. It just shouldn't exist. It's not real baseball. And so Wrigley Field in April is kind of the same way. The weather's going to be stupid. The wind's going to be stupid. The field's not like you've got the brick wall in center field. Like I've been to 33 major league stadiums, and I won't say that Wrigley Field's the worst one I've been to, but compared to expectations, it was actually absolutely the worst experience compared to what I was hoping for and expecting. Because you know what? Oakland Coliseum and Tropicana Field in Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg, nobody is hiding the fact that those stadiums suck. And it's still, you're watching a baseball game. It's better than most places on earth because there's a Major League Baseball game happening aside. Maybe not at Oakland, but Wrigley Field, everybody reveres it and loves it. And it's a dump. And the brick wall in center field with the crappy ivy, people get hurt. The weather's terrible, and you're at the mercy of the umpire whether or not to call the game when the weather's terrible. It's a stadium. I'm glad I've been there because I'm trying to collect the whole set, and it's a historic building and all that stuff. It's one that I have no desire to ever go back to. I'll probably go back one time because once I go to a game in Minnesota, so I've rooted for the home team in all 30 stadiums. My next goal is going to be to see the Dodgers play in all 30 stadiums. So I'll have to go back to Wrigley one more time, but it's going to be one time. And like, there are 25 stadiums that I think I'd really like to go back to that one. Wrigley Field's not one of them. Anyway, all of that said, between the weather and the defense and the umpiring and everything, this series is really easy to put in the rearview mirror and just say, okay, put that behind us. Yes, the games count on the record. We went 1-2 this weekend, but there's nothing really to take away from this other than we don't got to play at Wrigley Field again this year. Fingers crossed. I guess playoffs is a possibility, but we'll see. But chances are not playing at Wrigley Field again this year. Definitely not in the regular season. And so put it behind you, pretend it didn't happen, move on. I think that's what the Dodgers are doing. They've probably already forgotten it, ready for Minnesota today. I think that's it for Dodger talk today, because I'm going to come back in a second and I'm going to talk about 3 more pitcher injuries this weekend, and 2 of them for sure heading for Tommy John surgery, a 3rd one looking likely, and what that might mean for baseball. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please continue to keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets can be frustrating. Whether it's a Dodger game, some other sporting event, a concert, a comedy show, or whatever, it can be a major pain to not know how good the seats are, whether you're getting the best price, all that headache. But Game Time takes that headache away. With their seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And with the Game Time guarantee, you're guaranteed the best price on your tickets. That's right. If you find seats in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. You can also use Game Time's last-minute deals to save up to 60% off buying last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. I've personally used Game Time a lot, several times when I traveled to LA for Dodger games, and also when I went to see my favorite comedian, Nate Bargatze, here in Salt Lake City. Because I don't always trust everything I hear, I put the Game Time guarantee to the test, and I checked all the other ticket sites to see if I could find tickets cheaper. But I'm sold because Game Time was easily the least expensive tickets I could find. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRSTPITCH for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Hey, we are back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Please become an everydayer by watching and listening every weekday morning. You can become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. And you can catch every pitch of every Dodger game on SiriusXM and the SXM app by searching for Dodgers. And with that said, some tough news if you're a fan of good pitching this weekend. Yuri Perez for the Marlins and Shane Bieber for the Guardians both went down, and we found out they need Tommy John surgery. Perez, of course, is one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, one of the most exciting guys there is. And he only, I think he's 20 years old. He is... Yeah, he's 20 years old. He'll be 21 next week. So very young. Bummer to see that. Shane Bieber has struggled a little bit lately. Former Cy Young Award winner, struggled a little bit the last year or two, but had pitched really well in his 2 starts this year. He went down, and then Spencer Strider of the Braves, who was most people's pick to win the National League Cy Young Award this year. He went down with UCL damage that, usually that means Tommy John surgery. I don't think, at least when I'm recording this, we haven't heard for sure if it's Tommy John surgery, but it seems likely. This has all caused a lot of people a lot of uproar, panic. The MLB Players Association put out a statement saying basically pitching is hard, and then MLB, without, against our wishes, implemented a pitch clock and then shortened it this year. And it's MLB's fault that pitchers are getting hurt. And MLB put out a statement saying, "Nuh-uh, dummies." It's unfortunately, I don't like to do this, but in this case, I mostly agree with MLB because the fact is pitchers have been getting hurt for a long time. The pitch clock just started last year. Like, you can't really blame this on the pitch clock. Now, it doesn't mean there's not any specific injury that could have been exacerbated by the pitch clock. I'm not saying it never is the issue, but it's not the issue. Walker Buehler is recovering from a second Tommy John surgery. One of them happened before the pitch clock, and the other one happened before he ever threw a pitch in pro ball. And everybody else, like Daniel Hudson's been through 2 Tommy John surgeries. Tommy John surgery, since it was invented 40 years ago, has been very, very common and getting more common because doctors are getting better at it, and because pitchers are throwing harder and throwing more. You have guys who, from the time they're 8 years old, they have a pitching coach and they're chasing velocity and spin rate and stuff. And, nobody knows for sure, but there have been studies conducted, and I will be shocked if we ever do find out the answer. I'll be shocked if it's not mostly due to the fact that the human body isn't meant to throw 102 miles an hour. And the closer you get to do it, especially not 100 times a game. Now, Nolan Ryan threw very hard. Some people still believe Nolan Ryan was the hardest thrower in baseball history. Some estimates say he threw as hard as 108 miles an hour, but he didn't do that every pitch. And that's, part of why Nolan Ryan, if Nolan Ryan threw 108 miles an hour every pitch, he would have been the best pitcher in baseball history. He would have been, instead of being 324 and 284 or something like that in his career, he would have been 600 wins and 7 losses in his career. If he could have done that regularly. But no, the reason Nolan Ryan was able to do that when he needed to was because he wasn't going all out on every pitch. And honestly, that's my ideal for baseball, is pitchers not going all out on every pitch. We talk all about offense, like strikeouts, too many strikeouts, not enough action. Well, that's because pitchers are better than they've ever been. And the way to combat that, they've tried to do a lot of things, but as long as pitchers are throwing 100 miles an hour and you have relievers, so like you're 80% of your at-bats are coming against dudes who throw harder than 90% of the guys from my childhood were even capable of. That's the problem. And so, I've always said, I wish the MLB would limit it to 11 pitchers on the roster and more offensive players on the roster. So you've got a guy who's on the roster just because he's a pinch runner, just because he's fast. Great. More base running action late in innings or late in games. You got guys who can only hit one side or the other. Great. More pinch hitters, more at bats with the platoon advantage, with the offense having an advantage. And you have pitchers, starting pitchers, I have to throw 110 pitches this game because we have fewer relievers. So I've got to get through 7 innings. Guess what? If he has to throw 110 pitches, he can't go all out every pitch. So he is going to pace himself. And, and relievers come in. I might have to go 2 innings. I have to pace myself too. All of that would combine. It's never going to happen because you think MLB Players Association is up in arms about rule changes that lead to injuries right now. Say, okay, now you can have fewer pitchers. It's not going to happen, but that should be what they're aiming towards, because that would force pitchers. But I believe that at some point, yes, it's up to the league to do what they can to protect the players. But at some point, pitchers have to be responsible for their own health. And if you have Tommy John surgery because you are throwing harder than your body is capable of throwing safely, that's not on the pitch clock. It's not on the league. It's on, it's on the culture of the league right now, because that's what everybody wants. And so that's why I do think MLB making a rule would make things better. But honestly, and I don't wish injury on any pitcher, for sure, especially no particular pitcher. I would never say I want that guy to get hurt. But the general concept of pitchers getting hurt, I'm not up in arms about it. It doesn't bother me that much, because that's how we're going to get, whether it is because you have lesser pitchers in the league or guys eventually figure out, if I don't want to have my fourth Tommy John surgery, I might need to rein it in a little bit and put the, set a different pace and take it easy a little bit. And so pitch to contact more, focus more on location than velocity. I would love if Major League Baseball just made a rule that anything over 94 miles an hour is a ball. And, if the batter swings, then you take what happens is swinging. But if a batter takes a pitch and it's over 94 miles an hour, it's a ball, because then pitchers do have to focus more on location, on movement, all that stuff that is more fun. Like, I enjoy a fireballer as much as the next guy, but I love a good curveball, a good changeup, good location, good command, all that stuff. And so just fastballs aren't as exciting to me. And so again, I don't want any particular, I wish that these three guys heading to Tommy John surgery weren't heading to Tommy John surgery. I don't think it's the league's fault, other than it's the culture of baseball right now. And something probably does need to change, but it's not the pitch clock. It's probably things that are going to force pitchers to get more out of their comfort zone and actually say, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have to rein it in. And, I don't know what this actual solution that will actually happen is, because I don't think my version of the ideal solution is going to happen, but that's what I think should happen. I think that would be the actual best solution. Anyway, so again, I guess, I'm not as fired up as most people are. Like Spencer Strider said, you want to see the stars on the game. Having the stars hurt isn't good for baseball. Well, then don't get hurt, stars. Like, rein it in. If you want to be the star, and then you need to figure out a way to stay healthy and stay on the field. And if that means, I'm Spencer Strider, he's like 3 feet tall. He's got huge legs, but like, his body is not meant to throw as hard as it does. And so don't throw so hard. Like, it's not realistic. It's a cart before the horse, unless Major League Baseball makes changes. No pitcher is going to say, okay, I won't throw as hard, because then that pitcher just gets knocked out of the league, because there's 100 other guys willing to throw as hard as they can until their arm blows out. And then they replace them with the next guy who throws that hard too. So I don't know if there's a solution, but I'm not up in arms about it, because the solution right now is guys get hurt and you bring in the next guy, and we keep on living our lives with smiles on our faces. So anyway, that's going to do it for me for today. I think it'll be Vince back with me tomorrow. The Dodgers open up a series in Minnesota, weather permitting, today on Monday. So we will be here all week with that, off day on Thursday. So we'll probably do a mailbag episode, Thursday evening for Friday morning. So you start thinking about questions for that, but hopefully the Dodgers can bounce back and get a series win in Minnesota. Thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, especially our everydayers. Please become an everydayer by watching and listening every weekday morning. You become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. And you can listen to every pitch of every Dodger game on SiriusXM and the SXM app by searching for Dodgers. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Our DMs are open there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.